So a lot of times what I try to do is find a way to say, if there's a natural follow-up to this, explore it, build it, and let's go for it. But if it's something you're forcing out the door just to try to make a couple of bucks more, let's not bother.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical, everyone. This is Wes, as always, and today I'm going to talk about the news coming out of DC Comics that they're replacing their older heroes with new heroes with the 5G initiative. First, I'm going to cover the comicbook.com article, then I'm going to give some brief thoughts on it, and then retailer and YouTuber Perch joins me for a special interview where we talk about what he knows about the initiative and how he thinks it's going to affect the industry and his sales as a comic retailer. Now, without further ado, let's read the article from comicbook.com. DC will reportedly launch a publishing initiative in the coming year that will see many of its classic heroes replaced by next-gen successors, according to a report at Bleeding Cool. The initiative, called 5G, is something that several geek news outlets have been hearing rumblings about for months. Bleeding Cool has written about it more than once, and The Beat suggests that they had been tracking rumors as well. Here at comicbook.com, we had heard about elements of this during the summer. The idea, seemingly, relates to the DC Universe timeline unveiled at New York Comic Con last week. The 5G is almost certainly a reference to the fifth generation of DC heroes. The first generation begins with Wonder Woman and carries through the Golden Age. The second generation will start with Superman. The third generation would be from Crisis on Infinite Earths until Flashpoint. The fourth is the current crop of books, post New 52. And the fifth, well, it seems that most of DC's heroes will cede their roles to younger heroes. Bleeding Cool also suggests that Luke Fox will take over as Batman rather than a more seemingly obvious candidate like one of the Robins or Nightwing. Other characters like Jonathan Kent, Superman's son, and the Superboy of Brian Michael Bendis' Legion of Superheroes titles, and Cassie Sandsmark, Wonder Girl, and Young Justice seem like obvious choices. But well, as we said about the obvious ones above, that doesn't mean much. The Beat follows up on BC reports that the 5G idea will be precipitated by a crisis-style event and that there will be some kind of explanation put in place as to why some of the longer-running DC characters have been able to seemingly stay young for decades. This all feels a bit like the 90s when DC replaced Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, and Green Lantern, among others, with young, new versions. Of course, especially with the first rumored change being a person of color, fans will likely compare it to the Marvel Now initiative from a few years back, which introduced a group of younger and more diverse heroes in the Marvel canon. Once the classic heroes were back in place, many of those new characters have established themselves as key players in the Marvel Universe. Such a move helps sidestep a key problem with the comics market, that many readers will not try a new, unproven property, but will buy books they have years of investment in, even if they don't like the books. This has meant that it's hard for Marvel and DC to introduce entirely new characters, and some fans who are critical of introducing a more diverse cast of characters into superhero comics will claim that the real complaint isn't with the diversity itself as much as attaching the new characters to existing brands. It's a real case of do what I say, not what I do, and if building a temporary story around replacement heroes and promising a return of the originals is the way to do it, then it's hard to criticize that logic. Word on the street is that 5G will launch next summer and presumably roll through DC's line. I like how they're trying to pre-shame fans for any complaints they might have with the entire DC superhero lineup being replaced by newer, younger characters. Of course, this all feels like one of the reasons DC brought Brian Michael Bendis in to begin with. He was a huge part of the Marvel Now initiative, and Dan DiDio and Jim Lee brought him on board for a reason. They want him to help bring in new, younger superheroes to their lineup. And he's built a bridge to his old Marvel buddies and brought them in as well. And they've tried it with limited success, specifically with Wonder Comics. None of the new characters there have really hit or resonated with fans yet, except for maybe Naomi. The sales on that book actually skyrocketed after a pretty soft launch, but surprisingly they canceled that comic not too long ago. A few months ago we did hear that Luke Fox will be replacing Bruce Wayne as Batman, and then just last week we heard from Dan DiDio that DC was rolling out this new ultimate timeline for the DC Universe where everything was going to connect, and apparently that's all being done so DC can connect the current heroes with the next generation of heroes that are going to be launched in the 5G initiative. This didn't work out well for Marvel Now. It didn't work out for DC Comics when they tried it in the 90s. I don't see it working out well here either. I do think a couple of characters will probably catch on, will probably hit a lot bigger than others, and you'll see them around in the DC universe for quite a while and be mainstays, but I don't see this being a long-term change. Most readers just aren't going to accept these changes when you're replacing Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, all these characters. It's likely far too much change all at the same time, and people are going to reject it. And I'm not surprised that it's going to connect to this DC Crisis event that we've been hearing about for about 6 months now, that's going to be rolling out after Year the Villain. It sounds like Brian Michael Bendis himself will likely lead that effort. And I think depending on how well that's received by fans, it will dictate how far wide-ranging this 5G initiative is and how many characters are actually included. I don't think it's going to hit big. I don't think it'll resonate with fans, but it's definitely going to happen. Now, those are my thoughts. Now let's hear from Comic Perch and what he's heard and what he thinks about this upcoming 5G initiative. You know, there's a lot of buzz out right now that DC Comics are going to go do away with all the old the old classic heroes, and they're going to replace them with new, diverse, younger versions of the characters. What are you hearing about this new DC 5G expansion?
Well, I mean, I'm hearing a lot about it because it is something that DC is going to really try and push, especially in the kind of later half of 2020 leading into 2021. DC is trying to reimagine themselves a little bit, particularly with their new corporate owners and how they're trying to present themselves in a new way for their media efforts. So they are definitely on the look for how do they refresh their brand, how do they clean it up a little bit. And they've always wanted to create this interesting bridge between the Legion of Superheroes, the far future teen superhero kind of world, and today. And they've always felt that's kind of a missing element. So 5G, fifth generation, the next kind of era of DC Comics. Yeah, they're going to put some real time and effort into it. And there's definitely a lot of buzz in the industry and kind of to the stores of this is what you can expect out of DC next year.
So, you know, obviously with readers, this feels like Marvel Now all over again. Is that a legitimate fear? Is that something that DC fans should be concerned about? Because Marvel Now didn't go over very well.
No, it didn't. And I think, always readers should be concerned when a comic they've been following for a long time or a character's, going to be changed up for something new and, internet breaking. And a lot of the creators involved in this 5G effort are the same creators who did Marvel Now and led a lot of those efforts. I mean, Brian Michael Bendis being one of the huge names there. At the same time, don't panic. The sky is not falling. One thing that is very true on multiple fronts is you're not going to see the old classic characters retired, done away with, vanish. This is more than likely a fairly short-term effort. Think more Age of Apocalypse and less Marvel Now, where you're going to see the future, a possible future of some of these heroes. And you're going to see who takes on the legacy, and there will be some surprises. I mean, Luke Fox taking over Batman as opposed to Damian, those kinds of things as part of 5G. I think they're definitely going to try and go for some surprises, similar to kind of the DC 1000. I hope I'm remembering that right, but where they show you a glimpse of the future. We're going to see that, but all signs also point to this isn't going to stick. This isn't going to be kind of the new status quo going forward, and they're going to dump everything behind it. It's going to be simply a kind of a glimpse into the future, some time shenanigans going on there, and the original heroes. You're still going to see original Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, Aquaman. You're still going to see those characters. We're just giving you a hint to the future. And if it does well, just like Age of Apocalypse and some of these other events, you will see spin-offs. You will see that these things morph into solo books. I mean, absolutely. But I don't think you should be alarmed that the entire world's going to come apart and we're going to have suddenly check all the boxes of diversity Superman just for the sake of doing it.
So, you brought up an interesting name. I've been very critical of Brian Michael Bendis on the channel. I think his writing has definitely atrophied over time, and it's not the best quality right now. Do you think DC and Dan DiDio and Jim Lee brought Brian Michael Bendis on board with this specifically in mind?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things. My suspicion is that when those negotiations were taking place, there were a bunch of conversations about what could happen. In fact, we've had some confirmation of this. Bendis has said, he laid out several different plans, and they talked about where they wanted the ship to go long term, and I'm sure this is one of them. Bendis loves the idea of kind of next generational teen heroes, moving things, defying expectations. He does like that. It's been his go-to, and some might say it's become his only go-to. And so I think this was definitely a plan from the beginning. I think they needed to let a few things breathe. They needed to let some things play out. Kind of that rebirth era come to a close, which it's closing now with the conclusion of Johns' Doomsday Clock and King's run on Batman, and kind of a lot of these elements are coming to an end. Snyder, whether he renews with DC or not, my vote is on not. So I think there's a lot of different elements kind of coming to play here, and this one hits right at about the time these writers roll off. I mean, this is kind of late 2020 is what we're hearing, with a big event, a crisis event in the kind of late summer through fall that DC will go through. And that, I mean, it all matches. But I think readers should have this kind of balance inside themselves. Some of these stories will be good. Some of them will be terrible. Read the good ones. There will be ones that will fit you, and just let the terrible ones go, because chances are they will not stick.
Well, what does it say about DC's management right now, where they brought Brian Michael Bendis not at his peak, where he's kind of fallen on the same tropes over and over, and they bring him to rejuvenate an idea that failed so miserably at Marvel. He kind of did it mini style with Wonder Comics. It didn't hit. It hasn't really attracted much of an audience. Like, what are they thinking? Is it managerial malpractice at DC Comics right now? Because that's what it feels like, from my perspective.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of things going on. I definitely think there's some chaos there, but it's not the kind of news headline grabbing chaos that often gets the news headlines. It's more just a reaction of, they've got a new corporate owner in AT&T. They have a lot of questions about how that dynamic's going to go. All eyes are not on the comics division, they're on the movies division, and why that is not hitting. The MCU is hitting big time, and DC's is not. Or you have very strange mixed messages. You have Wonder Woman work, you have the Justice League not. You have Joker defying expectations and working really well, but that doesn't match to what DC was doing with the rest of their superheroes. So it's very, I think, confusing time there. And in that confusion, I think there's a lot of politics being played. I think there's a lot of territory being grabbed within the comics division. There's a lot of people who are scrambling for higher positions. And I also think there's some people who are seeing some writing on the wall with Marvel, where there is been a slow turning point of Hickman coming in and some of the other writers coming into Marvel that are strengthening that brand. And that's good for Marvel. But it also means that some of those people who had high level jobs at Marvel are moving across the street to DC, and they're trying to find their footing there. So there's a lot of people trying to figure out what they're doing and where they're going. I think there still is a lot of confidence and trust within DC that Bendis will deliver over time. There's this belief that you just got to give him a year or two to get rolling, and then magic will happen. And I think they're really expecting this magic will happen with this next crisis event, which is most likely going to be helmed by Bendis. And then what comes after it will be his architecture, similar to what Hickman has done with X-Men.
It's interesting you brought up AT&T twice now. That's a huge restructure. They brought in Warner Media to be part of it. They're about to roll out a huge streaming service, which is way more important than the comics division, and possibly just as important as their movie divisions that they've acquired. So it might be a while before they actually have eyes on DC. How long do you think DC has to get this right and get the ball rolling before AT&T finally gets down to their level of business and takes a look at DC? How long did DiDio and Lita have to right the ship, do you think?
Well, I mean, this is going to be the most warming answer, but potentially forever. I mean, it's not, it doesn't make enough money to be on anybody's radar. And it's just a reality. It's a small part of their business. At the same time, it's not a problem child. It does create some IP. It does link back to things. It completes a story for them. And you mentioned streaming, which is where everybody's eyes are at. They're going to continue to move forward with this. I was in an AT&T store yesterday trying to wrap my head around the plan. And they're talking about, hey, we've got all these other streaming things that we're offering. If you get the plan, you get this, 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 and this. It won't be the most surprising thing in the world for ebooks and comics and other things to be one of the elements they use to push tablets and that whole business line. So I think DC is valuable to them, but it's valuable to them because it exists, not necessarily because it's good or bad, just that it's there. And in that world, things can, the big threat for DC Comics is that they accidentally stumble into a big controversy. And that's why if you have anybody who's got any real big scandals in their mind, or they're going to rock the boat with other things, those are going to be the things that AT&T will jump on quick.
All right, so this is going to be the final question. You're a comic book retailer. What are your expectations for this? Are you excited? Do you think this is another step in the wrong direction? What are your general feelings about this and the way it's going to affect your business?
At the moment, and I think this is shared by a bunch of retailers right now because there's a lot of chatter in various retailer groups. Right now, nobody's expecting much out of this. They're not expecting it's going to flop. They're not expecting it's going to succeed. A lot of people are having a wait and see attitude around two things. First, what is this crisis event that we're talking about? Who's the creative team on it? Who's the artist? What's going to exist there? Since DC has started to live from event to event to event, with Year of the Villain and kind of other things. What is this crisis and how is it going to roll? If that event is well received, again, similar to what Hickman just did with House of X, Powers of X, the interest when those 5G books are going to go up significantly.
Mm-hmm.
If it's kind of a dud, if it's a Civil War II, then it's death. It's DOA for those books. The other thing, and I kind of mentioned, is on these new titles, whatever they might be, whatever they might look like, what's the creative team? This is where I think DC needs to go and really get some good, solid, longer-term creatives. Don't rely on Jim Lee to draw one issue for you. That's going to fail. Fans and retailers are both wise to that at this point. Don't have Jim Lee's name on it. Be careful of I love Mark Silvestri. Don't have the big names from the past attached to this because everybody knows those people go away. So instead, get some really solid up-and-coming artists who show a lot of detail, and that will give a lot of confidence too.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the interview today. If people want to follow you on social media or for your YouTube channel, where can they find you?
So I'm on Twitter at Comic Perch, and I do have a YouTube channel. If you just search Comics with Perch, you'll find it. And always interested in suggestions, comments, whatever people want me to talk about. And big thanks to Wes for always having me on the show.
All right. Thanks a lot, brother. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.